Hi everybody, and welcome back to my lab. Today I'd like to give you a little tour, show you what I have, this video was really inspired by one of the students who sent me a video of some equipment that he had picked up and put into his lab, and that's fantastic. All of you should really be looking at how to do the same thing. The reason being is that the best way to excel in electronics is to actually be interested, be keen, and to try and experiment with new parts, new concepts, and new ideas. And that is how we all learn, because every day is a learning experience for me. I find a new chip, a new circuit, something new to dig into, and I start to apply it. And even when we think we have all the answers, we're often surprised by new things. And so today I'm going to show you what I have, what I had, and I'll talk a little bit about what I have in my professional job, which is a slight upgrade from what I have now, and what I have now is definitely an upgrade from what I had even a few years ago. So the idea isn't that you rush out and spend thousands of dollars on some new equipment, but there is a certain materials that you should have at home, or at least in your parts kit, and there's aspirational things that you should be looking for actively and building up if this is truly a career choice for you. Okay, and so we're going to talk about must have, nice to have, and wish I had. Okay. And so this may be a little bit of a long video, but I'll try my best to make it entertaining. And let's take a look at what I have and what I've replaced, over the past few years, and a couple things that I've borrowed for my little stay here at home. All right, so let's dig in. So let's start by looking at the first thing that you're going to need. And the first thing that you're going to need is a workspace. And here you can see just kind of a little panoramic view. This is my office that I've built. It was important for me to build something that I could definitely sequester all of my equipment to. You can see I have a padlock or a lock on the door. It keeps the kids out. I have my coffee maker, so I don't need to leave. But this houses all of my electronics, kit and gear, so that my children don't come in and start messing things up. And more specifically, everything is where I've left it, which is super, super important. And so, nice to have is an office, must have is an area, and dream of is actually a facility, right? So you've got an outer office, an inner office, you've got all sorts of equipment and space for storage, and that's kind of the future. Okay. The next thing that we need to talk about is a workbench, and so you can see that I've minus the mess down here, please. I've actually built myself a desk. Sorry, not just a desk, a workbench, and this is actually a laminated bamboo. I find it's quite nice. It doesn't build up a static charge. It's extremely hard, and it was on sale at Rona actually, and so it worked out quite inexpensive for me. Okay. Now the next thing that we need to do is have some equipment. And so one of the first things that you're going to need is a computer. And so you can see I have 1, 2, 3 computers. My desktop is definitely more powerful than any of my laptops. It's what I use for my video editing, as well as my marking and my CAD. You can see I have some video editing going and some CAD going, and it's just running in the background. monitors, monitors are so cheap and plentiful these days. I don't know why anybody would suffer with just a single monitor. Keep your eye open, and you can quite often find them in the trash, or people getting rid of them because this is only a 24-inch. I need a 32 for my my new Duke Nukem. Whatever. But definitely keep your eye open. It's the same as these laptops. This laptop, it's an old Toshiba. It's an i7. It's quite old. I just tore it down tonight. Reseated the processor because it was overheating. Keep your eye open. You can find laptops cheap, and if you put a little bit of care into them, you can upgrade the hard drive to a solid state. You can put in more RAM. You can deal with any overheating issues. At the end of the day, you guys are electronics students. You should be able to dig into something, and what a great way if you can find something on eBay for a $100 laptop. Tear it down, see how it works, and don't worry about it. All right. Parts kits. Definitely, you guys have breadboards. I have breadboards. Mine are polluted up here. I've got way too many things that I need to tear down. They're definitely something that you need around your lab to prototype things, to test them out, to give it a try. And so don't be afraid of buying some good quality breadboards. These are not good quality breadboards. They just happen to be, falling off a truck one day, so they found their way into my truck. But yeah, feel free to pick up a multiple of them. Now, speaking of parts kits, I see everybody carrying around parts kits at school, and those are fine and dandy. I have slightly more drawers. These are just kind of my go-to drawers that I've built up over the years to do other stuff. Here's my miscellaneous screw drawer, and it's turned into a bit of a tool drawer. But this one came home with me from work. So this is something that is used throughout industry. For smaller parts, once you guys get into doing SMT parts, these are super handy little kits. You can keep a few parts in them, and you'll notice that I have a numbering system on all my work stuff. I actually created a database because it gets so big trying to write all of your parts on here and then trying to hunt it all down. And so I just have bins, and I look into my database and find the part that I want, and there it is. Okay, so feel free to grab a few of these. These ones here come from Canadian Tire. These ones over here are Acro Mills. They're a little bit better quality than the Canadian Tire ones, but you have to order them. And you can see I've got another one tucked away down there that I haven't started to use yet. All right, so also in your parts kit, you guys have some tools. This is my sort of hacker toolbox. Just some stuff and things in here right now. Nothing too fancy, but there are some tools that you need. And the parts that are supplied in your kit may be less than ideal, we'll say. So things that you definitely are going to want, you're gonna want some half decent ESD tweezers. This is something that absolutely you must have. Okay, I have some plastic ones as well, which are really nice. And once you start doing some more busy work, you can get a chip puller. A good set of screwdrivers. I mean, a good set of screwdrivers are great. These ones are awesome. These ones are crap. Okay, a solder sucker. Definitely, you're going to need something. These are horrible, but it's better than nothing. A set of side cutters and a set of needle nose pliers. Do not chintz out on this. You buy the cheapies, you'll be sorry. Here's a set of that's been floating around in a toolbox for so long they've gotten rusty. But small hand tools, definitely you want to spend the money on and make sure that they are ESD safe. You notice that I do have a pad here, and it is connected to ground with a strap. Okay, this is absolutely mandatory. All right, and so now we have the stuff that we could start to breadboard, but we don't really have a power supply. Okay, so I have several power supplies. There's an old Hewlett-Packard down there, as well as an old school project that we did a few years back that's capable of giving me AC voltage, which I use it for mostly, 5 volts and plus and minus variable 15. And so that's fine and dandy. The my Precision Hewlett-Packard, it doesn't give me great voltage, or current, I should say. It's only up to 3/4 of an amp, but it does provide up to 75 volts. So it's super handy for that. So what do you do? You know, at home, you know, you don't have to go out and buy something. You absolutely can make something. And so here's a project that I did some time ago. And you know, just a simple 317 and a transformer, and off you go. There's nothing says you have to buy something. You can build it. Okay. The next piece of test equipment that you absolutely must have is a good DMM. Okay. Now this Sperry is not great, but it is reasonable, and you can see that I have many handheld meters. My old Fluke 12 here, it's really cute and fits well in my travel bag, and so I have that. Now I do have my Hewlett-Packard as well, which is an oldie. You know, thank you to the college for you know, diverting that from e-waste for me. But you know, a good reliable meter is absolutely useful. It's not just useful, it's mandatory in my opinion. Okay. So then you know, we're coming along pretty good. So we can now breadboard stuff. But a lot of things that you're going to do in second and third year, you're going to need a function generator. And so that brings you into something like this. And this one again was diverted from e-waste for me. It's Tektronix. You can hunt these down on eBay and Kijiji, quite inexpensive. They are floating around, and the same with the oscilloscope. You know, if you should be able to find an oscilloscope for $150, and that does the trick for most things. So, you know, again, do I need to spend that kind of money? Well, again, you know, keep your eye open. This is being superseded by the Analog Discovery 2, but this will actually operate as a digital analyzer. It can operate as an oscilloscope. It can operate as a waveform generator, and it all runs off of USB, which is super handy and super dangerous. I mean, yes, I can get a $200 laptop or a $100 laptop, but if you connect this to mains, you can explode your laptop. So you might want to be careful. Make sure that everything is isolated, and you should be okay. Especially with some of the circuits that we're doing that are low power. Now that takes us to soldering. Okay, so these days I'm using, I just picked up a new Weller. It's the Weller, I think it's a WE1010. It's a nice enough iron. What I like about Weller is that the tips are available in different sizes. You can see I have, let me, if I can pull them out here, I'm trying to do two things at once. So I have 4 tips here, different sizes, and they do different things. And so whether you use a Weller, whether you use another brand, it doesn't really matter, but make sure that you can get tips, okay? Now, I said that I just purchased this one. it's because my old one, which I have used for some 20, let's call it 25 years. Poor little 35 watt guy, the thermal sensor has gone on it, and it's really not worth me trying to fix it. It just kind of nukes itself, and so temperature regulation is done by the sponge. Okay, so and that's, in case you're wondering what this bottle is, it's full of water. The other one's full of alcohol, which is good for removing flux. But again, when it comes to iron tips, you know, I've got several of them on hand because they do get torn up eventually. You can always use the tip activator. Come on. Tip activator to try to save it, which does work quite well. You know, oh yeah, that reminds me, solder braid. Okay, definitely need some of that when you're working. So definitely, you know, a good soldering iron is great. Beside it is my hot air gun. So why do I have a hot air gun? Well, there are a couple things. Primarily for using SMT parts. Okay, so you can see here, there's an SMT part. Here we can look on the magnifier. And so, trying to desolder this many pins, it's a bit of a pain. So if you can heat them all up, then you can just remove it with the tweezers easily, clean the pads up, and solder in the new component. It's also fantastic for using on heat shrink. You should never actually use an open flame like a lighter, or definitely never use your iron. It's, you know, it's kind of old hat. You'd take the iron and kind of rub it on the heat sink, and it really kind of makes a mess of everything. So you should try to avoid that. Okay. Now on the topic of soldering. You know, definitely you're going to need some ventilation. I have a smoke eater, just carbon block in front. Does a nice job at getting rid of the fumes from the flux, because you know, I'm down in the basement. It wasn't really feasible for me to punch a hole to run ventilation, and so for right now, I just have this to suck the smoke up. Now, the next thing that we can talk about is optics. Okay, so for years I didn't need anything. These days, you know, this is kind of the minimum that I use. You know, I can at least read a part number with that. But when you start soldering smaller components, you know, it becomes quite problematic, especially. Somebody like myself who's starting not starting, is quite far along in reduced eyesight. And so here you can see this small component. Here, let's see if I can get a scale up there. So this is a millimeter scale, and this is a SOT 32 case. And this is sort of the size of components that we tend to do in electronics. And so you know, I can give you guys a link if you wish to this optical device. It was actually quite inexpensive. It was about $136, I believe, plus some shipping. And you know, that seemed quite reasonable to me, because the higher end ones are you know, thousands of dollars. But compared to something like this little USB guy, the difference is exponential. This little guy has I think it's a 10-to-1 zoom, and this one over here is 100-to-1. And you know, while I don't need 100-to-1, what that does is I made sure that it had a fairly good depth of view, so that I could raise it up quite high. And so this is 8 inches, or what is that, 21 centimeters. So it gives me quite a bit of clearance, so that I can work under it without it actually starting to interfere. Okay, so definitely look at that. Now, one of the things that this has is actually a little LED light, which you can see you crank it up and it oversaturates this CCD on the camera. But it does make it nice when you're working on the viewport. This is just again a 24-inch that was laying around, didn't have a home, so I made one for it. You'll notice that there is a lot of light in here. This is really important. If you have a dingy corner that you're trying to work in and you can't see, it really becomes problematic. And so let's see if I can see it. Basically, I just put some under counter LEDs in. I've got lots of lights up ahead, overhead, and a couple bench lights, and that's fantastic. All these wires going around the back actually feed USB back to my video capture device here, to a USB 3 on my big PC. The big PC obviously has big fans, and that's one of the reasons for the poor audio quality when I'm recording. Sorry about that. But yeah, now we were talking about oscilloscopes earlier. I said that this scope was e-wasted. It replaced Kikosui, a scope that I had. It was a fantastic scope. Got quite a bit of use out of it before I retired it. It was actually newer than this one, but this one is actually a digital storage oscilloscope, so it actually has more features. So I replaced a newer scope with a more powerful scope, if you would. Now, if you can get a hold of a digital, you know, here's my old Tektronix TDS 210. This is a step down from a lot of the ones that we have at the school. This one I borrowed from work. This is my field scope. This is what I take into the field if I need to do anything, because it's nice and light. I mean, you can take a look at that versus that. You know, which one do you want to put in your truck and carry into a shop? And you know, while you might have difficulty finding a new one of these, you would definitely want to replace this one before you had to replace what I use at work, which is my key sight. Yeah. Now, while we're talking about work, this Weller, it's actually newer than the one that I have at work. The one that I have at work is going to get replaced with one of these very shortly, and so that's, you know, you're talking about something that is actually better than hobby grade, but not crazy expensive. I think I forget how much this was, but yeah, less than $300. All right, now on the topic of soldering, I have it out here so that I could remember. Definitely good solder, okay? So this Spark Fun stuff just happened to be floating around, and it's not bad. It's not bad at all. MG Chemicals makes good stuff. They're not the only ones. There's quite a few manufacturers that make good solder. Do not cheap out on it, okay? This is something that you're going to use every day that you're soldering, so make sure that you definitely spend the money on it. Okay. Now, when you take a look around, you can see, well, right from the coffee maker to all my test equipment to my LED lights to the 2 soldering irons. We've got, of course, my music. You have to have an iPod somewhere, I'm sure. All of this requires power. Okay. Especially things like power supplies and irons. Okay. And trying to power everything off one single circuit becomes problematic rather quickly, especially when you start getting brownout voltages on your test equipment. And so in this little lab here, I've pulled 5 circuits in here. So when it was wired up, this was purpose built. And you know, I get that not everybody will be able to do that, and I don't think anybody would expect you to. But if you are near your circuit box and there's a couple available receptacles for you to take advantage of, do it. Be careful with extension cords, because they can be problematic, to say the least. All right. And what else can I say? Oh, yes, of course, lots and lots and lots of storage space. So I didn't pan up here before. You can see boxes and what have you up there. Whiteboards are always great. You can, flow charts and timing charts and everything else. Some place to keep your books and knickknacks and what have you are fantastic. Drawer space, full of things and stuff. Rather quickly you start amassing knickknacks and things, future projects and things to fix, and it's amazing how quickly it all builds up. All right, so I see this video is already quite long. I'll try to edit it down a little bit, but hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight into what I use on a regular basis in my home lab, and inspires you to take a look at what's available on the market, and when something comes up that's too good to pass up, grab it. All right, thanks, and stay tuned. Bye now.